Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. Welcome to 2025. As we look ahead to the new year, what are your resolutions? Are you making any? And how do you plan to reach them? We're going to be joined by a life coach and a digital creator who will share her 2025 bingo card. You might be inspired to make one too. And in our second half hour, the new year is also a good time to check on your finances. A money expert will join us as we look at new taxes and benefits. I'm Dan Burritt, in for Michelle Elliott. Welcome to BC Today. And thank you for joining us on radio, TV, and our live stream. You can call us now on our top story, New Year's resolutions. Are you making any? What are they? How do you plan to achieve them? Our number is 604-669-3733 across Metro Vancouver. In BC, across our province, call us at 1-800-825-5950 or hit pound 690 on your cell phone. Please be pulled over or hands-free when you do so. You can also email us, bctoday@cbc.ca. So, we've heard them all. Losing weight, eating better, drinking more water, drinking perhaps less. Valiant resolutions, but it's the sticking to them that can be the tricky part. The CBC's Holly McGowan hit the streets of downtown Vancouver earlier to ask people what they resolved to do this year and how they plan to carry those resolutions through to 2026.
2025, do you have a New Year's resolution for this year?
I do. It's to be more sympathetic. I'm not a very sympathetic person sometimes, so I gotta work on that.
I like that one. And how do you think you're going to stick to it?
That's a great question. Maybe be more wary of other people's emotions.
Did you have any New Year's resolutions in the past that worked out, that were successful?
Yeah, I did actually. My wife and I do this time of year like a sort of vision board around what we want to achieve each year. So we do that every year, and yeah, we've had loads of things work out because of that.
That's smart. So a vision board, I was going to ask you too. So the tips and tricks, vision board is one. What else is useful you find so you stick to your New Year's resolution?
I think just having it, what we do is we write down all the things we want to achieve or do or change, and then we get our teenage kids to put it in like an art board, and then we've got that in the house somewhere that we walk past and see all the time to sort of keep looking at and make sure the year we're ticking off the things that we wanted to do.
Exercise. I've actually stuck to the routine, so exercise was a good one.
All right. Well, how did you stick to it?
Just every day made sure I was walking or running or doing something active. Yeah.
And what about this year? Do you have any New Year's resolutions this year?
I think this year, just to be healthy and eat healthier. So making sure I'm not eating a lot of sugar like I normally do.
You always try and get off the sweets, get off the alcohol. This year we're gonna make a big push to just go the month of January, no alcohol. Yeah.
And do you have any tips, or how do you think you're gonna keep that?
Have sparkling water in the house, non-alcoholic drinks, just to have, because we don't have pop in the house, so it's easier to just, water won't cut it. Have something else that's kind of low sugar like that to scratch the itch.
Little carbonation.
Yeah, carbonation. Exactly.
Saving more money for my future as well, and for my what you call this one, for my life and for my family. Yeah. So same thing. Save money, travel, and don't work so hard.
So the same ones before, we're going to carry through to 2025. Do you have any ideas on how you're going to stay on track with that New Year's resolution?
Well, I guess that's kind of be like being consistent. Yeah, being consistent with your core as a person, most especially with your New Year's resolution. And yeah, that's it.
The New Year's resolution this year for 2025, what is it?
I think it's just less, I'm a workaholic, maybe less workaholic and more stuff that is more for the inside, for the soul type of thing. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, I just don't want to be chasing the almighty buck anymore. So hopefully that ends this year. And well, I might if I'm a successful actor, maybe maybe that would change anyway. But my goal is just to enjoy life more.
That is a great New Year's resolution. And what are the tips? What are the tricks? How do you think you're going to keep that for this whole year?
You got to set goals, and even if you don't accomplish them, it doesn't matter. If they're written down, then you can keep looking at them, and it gives you something to work towards. So I think if people do that, if you say you're gonna, people that want to lose weight, that's always a losing cause. You got to say if you're going to lose weight, you're going to say how you're going to do it, and.
There's some inspiration for you, and we'd love to hear from more of you. What are your New Year's resolutions? Are you making any? What do you want to see in 2025? Do you have any predictions for the new year? Give us a call now, 1-800-825-5950. In Metro Vancouver, the number is 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell phone. You can also email us, bctoday@cbc.ca. Joining us now, Rebecca Haas, life coach and mediator. She is of Métis and mixed European ancestry and a member of the Métis Nation of BC. She also joining us is Kaylen Faye, digital creator and TikToker who's here to teach us about 2025 bingo, among other things. She joins us from Wisconsin. Good afternoon to you both. Thanks for being here.
Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
You're very welcome. Rebecca, I'd like to start with you. It's the time of year when people are setting resolutions, some of them for the new year. What are some of the challenges they run into?
Well, I think we heard it in the prepared tape you just shared, is that we have a lot of aspirations and we get excited about goals, but we also know that we tend to not complete. I love that question of how are you going to finish, right? How are you going to be sure that you reach that goal? And people struggle with that. And I think that pitfall is the one we all fall into. We do set the losing weight or not drinking in January. Those are pretty common for most of us. Ending a vice that is not giving us a lot of pleasure in life in the long term. But the short term is always where our mind and our heart lays. And so we're quick to pick back up with our donut and our double coffee. And so I think the biggest challenge for us is to really think about, if we achieve this, who does it allow us to be? So that we get very involved in doing and checking off our boxes, but we sort of forget what is the purpose of this. And in some ways, is the goal resonant and thrilling? And so do we have enough passion to want to keep recommitting to it? So I think we often let our inner critics write our sort of New Year's resolution of the things that we don't like about ourselves, or it's a should, or something a relative would like us to change. And we forget about really tapping into what would be thrilling for us, what resonates for us, and then really reactivating the fuel of achieving that versus the inner critic who says, but you never do it every year. You always give up before the end of January.
Now, you coach creatives as part of your practice. What do you tell people about how we can all work with life goals perhaps more creatively?
Yeah, what I really encourage people to do, and this is sort of goes against our grain, we tend to think about goals as achievable. And so we practically will say, we'll make it something we know that we can get to. So we feel like we have achieved or finished our goal. And I'm going to give counter advice, and I'm going to say, I want you to really think about what would be thrilling if it happened. And it's not about actually achieving that goal, but it's finding the underlying value that is the fuel that will help you make even the small change. And so I think it's really encouraging people to think creatively about, if it could be anything in the world, what would I love it to be? And then you'll get a little bit more at the heart of why this goal matters to you. And that's what you really need to know if you want to move something ahead in your life. So I think it's really a piece of thinking about really big, fantastic things and not worrying about being disappointed, but really tapping into why it would be so exciting if you manage to achieve it.
Kaylen, Faye, you live and work and appear to thrive in creative spaces. What are you thinking about right now for this new year?
I just know this is a big year for me. It's my first year, full year, officially out of college. So there's a lot of things that I'm looking forward to. And I'm excited just to be able to embrace it all and set goals and make every day count.
Would you kindly explain your 2025 bingo card for us? What is this?
Yeah, of course. So I feel like I've heard a lot of people just saying over the past year, oh, that wasn't on my 2024 bingo card, over things just happening in the world. So we kind of took that in a different way and thought about how we can kind of put that into real life and cross off things as we go. So we made these 2025 bingo cards I don't want to take credit for this idea because I know there was a lot of people that probably have done it, I think, but this is what we made. So we just kind of put our goals on here that we want to accomplish throughout the year as a reminder for things that we want to get done and how we want to feel.
You're holding. Could you hold that up again for us for our visual audience, for our radio audience? Could you read off some of those? What are some of the big ones you've got on there?
Yeah, well, some of them are small, some of them are big. I think it's good to have a mix of both. Like my smaller ones are like learn to crochet, read a new book. Some bigger ones would be like buy a house, grow on TikTok, things like that. But just it's cool because everybody's bingo boards are so different. I had 3 friends that we did it together, and all of ours were so extremely different, even though we're all the same age. Like that's the whole beauty of them, is everybody's gonna have different goals for the new year. So it's kind of fun being able just to set goals for ourselves and do what we want to do.
You said your friends had some different goals. What were some of theirs compared to yours?
Yeah, well, I mean, my boyfriend and I have been dating for a few years, and one of mine I have on there is get engaged, and one of my friends that I was working on had go on a first date. Like, so things like that.
Slight spread there.
Right, like being in your 20s, everything is so different for everybody at every different stage of their life. So that's what I thought was a lot of fun in it. And I read every single one of the comments on the video that I posted, and just seeing like what other people were putting on theirs and inspiring that creativity was so special to me. And I'm glad that I got to kind of be a part of that.
And do it with friends. That's awesome. Rebecca, back to you for a moment. Coming from your Métis heritage, are there differences between that world, that view of the world, and more Western thinking when it comes to life goals?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that's been a huge part of the evolution of my practice as a life coach, apart from my being a creative person, is I spent a lot of time working with an Anishinaabe elder, actually, who came to see me present at one point at a university. And I have a version of goal setting, which is resonant and thrilling versus, goal achieved. And I had changed some of the language, but he came to me and he said, oh, no. He said, you have to understand, he said, it really is a wheel. It's really not a goal achieved kind of process in the worldview, he said, that I hold. It's movement is what we're looking for. And he said and I thought that was such a huge shift for me as living in a very Western culture where it is like success, fail, right? We're very binary, which is why New Year's resolutions are hard. And it was such an amazing gift that he gave me, which I use in all my coaching. He told me you should vision to start. And then from your vision, he said, people think passion comes next, but it's actually perseverance. And we work hard, and then passion follows. And I think it's passion, that's the drug we're all looking for. But I love that he sets it up so we know it's a little further along. And then rather than goal achieved, we have movement, which means we can take our learning, which is really also a worldview that I hold very close, that it's learning, and then I can reapply myself into it. So I think that's a big shift. So that Anishinaabe elder Renee Mishaki was very influential for me. And then, of course, the other piece is the 7 generations, for me to really look out when I'm setting my intentions and when I'm trying to vision, I'm thinking about how it's impacting generations to come. I love hearing from the other guest here, because this is really the world that I'm trying to leave behind for the next generation. And what can I do to make it a better place as part of my own intentions in the world? It will benefit me, but it needs to make a big difference for those coming after me.
We'd love to hear from you across the province, from Metro Vancouver all the way up to the north. Give us a call now, 1-800-825-5950. 604-669-3733 is our number on the Lower Mainland. Are you making New Year's resolutions? How do you plan to stick to them? What are they? Have you done it before? Do you have some tips and tricks for people to achieve those goals? You can also email us, as some of you have already, bctoday@cbc.ca. We would love to hear from some of you. Kaylen, when you put out these vision board, these 2025 bingo boards, what do you hear from older family members, parents, loved ones about that creative process and what they think of it?
My parents are super supportive in everything that I do, so they loved it. They didn't really say much about it, but just that it was a cool idea, and that anything that I want to accomplish, I could. This actually came from, we made vision boards. I've been making vision boards for the past few years. So the goals that came out of this were things that I want my life to look like in a year. So as the other guest said, it's just an ongoing thing that I've always been a goal setter. I've always just had a vision for what I want life to look like. And the bingo cards were just a great way to kind of put that into reality and check things off as I go.
So it didn't feel like there was a generational gap between people making New Year's resolutions and making a vision board versus the old bingo?
Not necessarily. I mean, it's not something that I think my family members would have thought of, but it's something that they think would work. And I read a lot of the comments on the video that I posted, and there was a lot of people saying that they want to do this with their kids and or they did this with their husband, or like the older generations just kind of getting involved with it. And I think that's something that's awesome about social media is all of these ideas kind of connect and people can embrace it in their own ways and do what they want to do with ideas that are online.
You mentioned you've had a lot of comments on the video you posted. Social media, as we know, can be a pretty toxic place in some realms. What has been the general feeling of people looking at the vision board? The bingo card.
The bingo card, yeah. It seems like everybody like loves the idea. Everybody has they're inspired by it. They want to try it. There are obviously a few that are like, I'm going to stick to the vision boards, and that's great too. Like if obviously like a bingo card isn't what you want to do for 2025, you don't have to. But it is a fun idea, and it's been fun seeing that a lot of people love the idea and want to do it as well.
Rebecca, to you again, we often hear of the same goals. You mentioned some of them we already have: losing weight, having more success in jobs or relationships. Is there one? Is there a perhaps a familiar or more successful way to go about achieving your goals?
Yeah, I would say that it would be really wonderful if people could say it's 1 year from today. So imagine we're not ringing in 2025, we're ringing in 2026. And if you could look back at your year, what do you think you would be most excited to talk about? You'd be so thrilled you did what, right? You'd be so happy you said no to, I said yes to, I had such fun doing, it's really a fill in the blank, maybe it's a bingo card exercise. It's imagining that it's already done and really thinking about what fed your soul and what made a really big impact on your life. And I think that's a much, much better way to go at it, because I think otherwise we do tend to set ourselves up for ways that we're not going to succeed, and we get very tired of our same goals. And so I think looking at them as being done and imagining what that feels like can be a really different experience. And we might get a better sense of what it helps us manifest in our life and how we're able to walk as a different human. If I lost 5 pounds, who am I able to be? And I think that becomes my question 1 year out. You know, what was I able to engage in? Who was I with? What happened because that goal was achieved? So it's really starting to tie that together and not being fixated on my 5 pounds. I already told my husband I'm not weighing this year. Don't ask me, I'm not doing it.
I hope he's not asking you how much you weigh or how much you've lost.
Well, you know, when you've been married a long time, we talk about a lot of things.
I can hear people chuckling through the radios and on TV right now. I want to read an email we have from Joanne in Victoria, who says, my resolution is to keep a journal, making an entry every day covering the top resolutions made every year. Exercise, eating healthy, limiting alcohol, spending more time with family and friends, etc. So that at the end of each day, the plan is to recap the day. This will allow me to celebrate, reset, and encourage me to keep on track. Joanne, thanks for emailing us with that. Kaylen, what do you think about that, about keeping an everyday journal? Some people do. It can be a bit more of an exercise, can it?
Yeah, I think it's a great habit to have, just to do that every night. I always try to do my everyday nightly journal, morning journal. But I feel like I just can't really stay consistent with it always. So it is, I personally like having a visual thing. That's just something that I check occasionally as a reminder. But I do think journaling is super, super good to do. I know I have a couple, I love journals. I have many journals that are half completed. So maybe this year I'll start journaling.
I want to read another email we have from Scott Jansen, who says, Happy New Year. He's calling us emailing us from Burnaby. He says, this year, let's shift from resolutions to revolutions, New Year's revolutions. Think about starting a revolution in your life that prioritizes the planet and protects the ecosystems that support us. Young voices are calling for bold action, urging us to rethink how we treat the earth. Let's spark a revolution in thought, putting planet health first. What's your revolution this year? Rebecca, if I can ask you, what about his idea of a revolution? Seems he's putting his foot on the gas, if I could say that, a bit more than just a resolution.
Yeah, I love that, because you may remember I keep saying it's resonant and thrilling, right? By
Mhm.
saying revolution, you see a kind of the spark that gives all of us, and we start to think bigger and we start to feel more inspired. So I think a revolution is a great way to frame it. I do feel that resolutions do not help me get anywhere. I love intentions, and I love the word revolution. So I'm a big thumbs up for the revolution.
And Kaylen, what about that? Taking it a step further about making it a revolution.
I think getting more people involved in that would be super important.
And final, we're just closing in on our last few moments here. Rebecca Haas, I'll start with you. If somebody's listening to this, thinking about where can I start, what's in 20 seconds, what's your advice to them?
I would say always give yourself credit for the small step. So don't think about the giant step. It really makes us procrastinate. I would say even thinking about wanting to start your revolution or make that change, that counts as change. So give yourself some kindness and really count all the little steps.
And Kaylen, Faye, last word to you. If you can give it to us in 15 seconds, what's your advice for bingo card and beyond?
I would say don't compare, set goals for what you want yourself to have, like what life you want to have yourself, and don't compare your life to other people's, because everyone's is going to be different, and just embrace every day and become the best version of yourself.
Kaylen Faye, digital creator and TikToker, and Rebecca Haas, a life coach and mediator. Thank you both for joining us. Much appreciated. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
You are listening to BC Today, and it is 12:28. BC, pardon me, we want to update you on our massive fundraiser. CBC BC's Make the Season Kind fundraiser has officially come to a close. That fundraiser ended on the last day of 2024, and we're just rounding up the final total. As far as we know, this is how much we have raised: $2,399,571.32. We're on the brink of $2.4 million there. We thank everyone who donated. These donations will go out to the 110 organizations who are part of Food Banks BC, and our pleasure to put together this fundraiser every year. It's possible this total may go up. There may be some more checks in the mail. We know some of those were delayed by the Canada Post workers' strike, and if we can get to 2.4 million, that would be awesome. You're listening to BC Today on CBC. We're on Radio 1, CBC Television, and live streaming on our website, cbc.ca/BC, as well as YouTube at CBC Vancouver and on our CBC News app. Coming up in our next half hour, the new year is also a good time to check on your finances. Maybe you have some money goals. We will speak with a finance expert and look at some of the tax changes and benefits that are coming in this new year. Thanks for joining us on CBC Radio 1, CBC Television, and live streaming on the CBC News app, cbc.ca, and on the CBC Vancouver YouTube page. Coming up in our next half hour, we will be discussing the new year in finances. What do you want to do to get a better handle on your finances? Do you need some advice? We're going to speak with a money expert, and we'll take your calls and emails right after this news update with Robert Zimmerman.
Good afternoon. It appears nobody was hurt in a large fire overnight in Surrey. Several businesses in the Wally Strip Mall were damaged. Investigators are trying to determine if a broken gas line may be responsible. Alexander Elementary School in Duncan will reopen Monday despite a fire that broke out New Year's Eve. It caused significant damage to the back pod of the school, but the main building was not affected. The cause is still under investigation. And BC Assessment says property values in the province have remained flat in many regions, including major urban centres such as Vancouver and Victoria. Almost all communities in the Lower Mainland saw growth or decline within a 3% range. In Greater Victoria, the only place where single-family home values changed beyond that range was North Saanich, which saw a decline of 5%. A small number of communities, mostly in the interior, did see spikes in values, including a 13% jump in Tumbler Ridge and 10% increases in Williams Lake and Wells. And now the forecast on the north coast, a chance of snow or rain this afternoon with a high of 2. The temperature falling to minus 27 with a mix of sun and cloud in the piece. In the central interior, including Prince George, some sun and cloud with a high of minus 16. Highs from minus 6 to 0 with periods of snow in the West Kootenay, mainly cloudy in the East Kootenay. In the southern interior, including Kelowna, periods of snow with a high of 0. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria, and the Fraser Valley, periods of rain this afternoon with highs around 5 degrees. That's your CBC News update from Vancouver.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zimmerman. Robert Zimmerman at the CBC News Desk. Before we get to our next guest, we have a little bit of nostalgia for you. It has been 25 years since Y2K. Remember that? When many feared computers would crash and the world would descend into chaos at the turn of the century. Here's some questions people had between 1999 and 2000.
The Millennium Bug is a hot topic of conversation these days, and as we tick away towards the year 2000, everyone wants to know, doomsday scenario or status quo?
My question is, next time I fly over somewhere like China or Russia where they have computerized air traffic control systems, are they going to have the bug worked out, or am I just going to find myself flying into things?
Leonard Trisco is with the province's Action 2000 squad. His job is to make sure everything is tickety-boo in BC when clocks strike midnight next New Year's Eve.
If you're going to take air travel, then I would get on a plane at least a week or two before the change in the millennium, and I'd schedule my return date a week or two past the change in the millennium. And that's mainly due to the unknown traffic control status in a lot of the foreign countries.
When people tell you that airplanes will be falling out of the sky, that's not true.
When the year 2000 comes, I want to know if my computer is going to mess up or something.
The recommendations would be basically to shut your computer down on December 31st. Okay, do a backup of whatever is important to you. Okay, roll over into January 1st, fire up your computer, and see what date it has as an operational date.
It is a brand new year, but last year's bills may soon be piling up, a situation many people find themselves in after the holidays. Others may be wanting to make a change, perhaps working less or traveling, and that's going to take some more financial planning. We'd love to hear from you. What are your financial goals for 2025? Do you have any advice, things that have worked for you that would work for others? Give us a call now, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733 is our number in Metro Vancouver, pound 690 on your cell phone. You can also email us, bctoday@cbc.ca. Joining us now is Jessica Moorhouse. She is an accredited financial counselor and host of the More Money podcast and author of Everything But Money, The Hidden Barriers Between You and Your Financial Freedom. Thank you so much for joining us, Jessica. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. you work with a lot of young millennials, we'll call them that, differences between
I
their...
don't know if we're young anymore,
Yeah, I know.
but I do work.
Fair point. Yes, we're not going to mention age at all in this program.
No.
What about the differences between, let's call them younger people's goals for this year and other generations? What are you hearing?
Oh gosh, yeah. There's a lot of the same kind of struggles that every generation struggles with. Definitely, real estate home ownership is kind of front of mind. Whereas my parents were somehow, on one income able to own a house in their 20s. That's kind of a dream or a fantasy for many people in Gen Z and Gen Y. And so I think that's a big issue. Cost of living is front of mind for a lot of people, just with what we've dealt with for the past couple years, and just how expensive everything under the sun is: rent, groceries, breathing the air, all that kind of stuff. So I think those are some of the biggest things that people my age or younger are dealing with right now.
So January can be a sobering time of month, if we can call it that. Sometimes referred, or a month in and of itself, sometimes referred to as the financial hangover if people maxed out some credit cards for holiday spending, blew some cash.
Yeah.
What are some of the strategies you advise people for getting some of that debt in check?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of pressure in January to kind of, turn the new chapter and get everything right and undo any mistakes you made last year. I would say give yourself a bit of a break, because, it's okay to take your time. I don't personally believe in New Year's resolutions, because there's stats that show that most people don't actually do them. Set some goals that have specific action steps that are attached to them, and really be clear on what do you want to achieve, and make sure that they mean something to you, that they really are in line with your personal values, and they aren't someone else's goal or what you think you should be trying to achieve, because eventually you're going to lose motivation and inspiration, and it's just going to fall to the wayside. Another thing that I've been telling people this year is, every New Year's, I'm usually in the media talking about New Year's goals and how to reset and how to, take action with your finances, which is great. But what I've been finding, talking with people, and what inspired my book, Everything But Money, is a lot of people find themselves in the exact same situation the year after they're in this cycle. And so if you feel like you're in that situation, despite all the financial knowledge you have, all of the books you've read, all the podcasts and radio shows you've listened to about financial literacy, there's probably something else going on that is preventing you from getting ahead financially. And those are things that I talk about more in my book. Things that are, helpful to do is to really figure out, how does money make you feel? How did you learn about money growing up? And did you kind of take some of those lessons or behaviors from maybe your parents with you in adulthood, and maybe they're not super healthy? So what can we do to maybe unlearn some things and learn some new things, so we really can turn the page and start fresh with our finances?
Now let's talk about your new book, Everything But Money. You talk about helping people find their own personal money story. What does that mean?
So everyone already has a money story, and really that's the narrative that you kind of wrote, maybe unknowingly, since childhood, of what money means to you, how it makes you feel, what its role is in your life. And a lot of us have a very kind of negative association with money. Money has, sometimes come in and out of our life. It hasn't been very predictable or a constant. Usually it's something that we're always striving for, and sometimes we get burned. We've also made lots of mistakes. So often we don't have a very good relationship with money. We think of it as something just, oh, I wish, I had more money, and then maybe I'd have a better relationship with money. But that's not usually that could be one issue, like lack of money, lack of income. That's one issue. But most of us, we need to rewrite our money story, so ultimately we can be in control of money and not let it control us. And I think that's kind of where most of us are at, is we feel like money is dictating our actions and our choices. Really, it should be the other way around. We need to be in control. And so we need to figure out how we can better understand where we're coming from, what our money origin story is, so then we can deconstruct it and then rewrite it.
Where do you suggest people start in that process, especially if they're feeling overwhelmed, even if they didn't do much spending in December and the lead up to Christmas and other holidays, and they're still feeling pinched, especially, and heaven knows we have heard from so many Canadians about the cost of living, the cost of everyday things, and inflation has taken such a big bite out. Where do you suggest they actually begin?
Well, I always tell people literally from the beginning, start with really figuring out what's your first money memory, because that is how you can find out what is the first association you ever had with money. So you can figure out how does money make you feel? And what I found by interviewing so many people for this book is most of us have a big connection with shame when it comes to our money. Shame is something that will stop you in your tracks, freeze you, prevent you from taking, calculated risks that can help you, help you honestly just get further financially. And so if you figure out where it started, how money makes you feel, and then figure out why does money make me feel that way? And you can do that by taking a look at your childhood, working with a mental health professional to figure out maybe you have some unhealed trauma, figuring out all these other kind of internal things that will then kind of set you free because now you'll have some answers you didn't have and it will allow you to find out what are the steps that I can now use to move forward. I know that sounds real sounds easier said than done. It is a lot more hard work internally, but it is, I think, the thing that this will be the biggest difference with your finances. It's not just about, set up a budget. Well, you probably have and it didn't work, so something else is going on that we need to do.
What are your goals for 2025 when it comes to money? Do you have any? Do you have any challenges? Do you have any aspirations that you'd like to achieve this year? As we know, a lot of Canadians across the country and in British Columbians here feeling the pinch of inflation and the high cost of living. What is working for you and what advice do you need or want? Give us a call, 1-800-825-5950. In Metro Vancouver, the number 604-669-3733. Email us, bctoday@cbc.ca. Jessica, you also talk in your book about how institutions and systems can hold people back from financial goals. Can you give us some examples of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the personal finance world, the term privilege is becoming a little bit more commonplace, which is really important because a lot of us do come from a place of privilege and a lot of us do not. And, privilege simply means that you have certain advantages and opportunities that you didn't necessarily earn, you were born with. And so if you come from a background that doesn't have all those privileges, it's going to be harder for you to get a well-paying job, to get a promotion, just to move forward compared to certain other people. And so it's really important to understand that, acknowledge privilege when you have it, so you can lift others up that don't have it, and just understand what are some of these institutions, these systems that may be holding you back. If you're a person of color, if you're a woman, if you have a disability of any sort, there are some real barriers that exist that will make it harder for you, unfortunately, compared to someone else without, not in that situation. And so it's important to understand that for everyone, so we can come at, life and our finances with more empathy, and we can be allies with each other and try to break down those systems together.
Do you include banks in those institutions?
Well, yeah, absolutely. So there's a big section in my book that talks about discrimination within the banking system, the financial world. If you work in finance, it's very male and pale. And so if you are a woman or a person of color or you have a disability, it's going to be harder to get into those higher ranking roles in the financial industry. And also too, as a customer, it may be more difficult for you to get approved for a loan, and you may face more discrimination. And so that is something that there's so many class action lawsuits for banks in the US and in Canada that prove that there is still a lot of discrimination going on. And we need to talk about it so we can prevent this from happening anymore in the future.
Where do you think the emphasis ought to be when it comes to having those systems change? Because if it's an individual, and as you mentioned, perhaps it's somebody who did not come from privilege, they may be a minority, they may be living with a disability. It can almost feel as though it's incumbent on them to try to change the system rather than the system adapting to help more people.
Yeah, it's difficult because there's no easy solution to break down discrimination in these really big institutions and systems. I think if you have a voice, you're supposed to use it. This is your responsibility. And that really comes down to those people with privilege, with that voice that can be heard. Because I know a lot of people without those same privileges, they are talking about it, they are advocating. And it is, sometimes we're just ignored. And so I think if you want to make change and see change in the world with your friends, your family, your colleagues, your community, and you see people not being treated fairly, it's your responsibility to step up and do something about it. And there's something you can do on the individual level. There's also things you can do more in bigger groups. And so that really comes down to seeing where you can lend a hand when it comes to advocacy, so we can change some of these systems and these rules. And we have seen a lot of change over the past couple decades, but there's definitely more change necessary.
What are some of the strategies that you advise people can use to get past their own money barriers? You mentioned shame. We talked about privilege, past mistakes. Where do you advise people to try and get past that?
So really, it's about figuring out where you would like to be with your money. What kind of relationship would you like to have with money? And then figuring out, okay, how do we get to that place? And really, again, it's a big thing to do. Hard to just, tell you the solution in this one little interview. But what I talk about in the book is there are ways that you can work with a financial professional and a mental health professional to help you get further than you can on your own. You can't do all this on your own. Sometimes you do need someone who's an expert in that field to kind of get you to that next goalpost. And also just, be kind to yourself, be patient. And, really ultimately the big message in the book is to have hope. When you don't have hope, then that's where progress ends. And I believe that anyone can change their financial future. I don't necessarily believe that we could all be billionaires, but we can absolutely improve our financial situation for the better. There are these real barriers that exist and some that we don't have that much control over, or it's very difficult to change, but that shouldn't make you want to not try. There's a part in my book where, someone I interviewed, and, he dealt with a lot of discrimination in his life and his career. And he had a really great quote that's about not losing your fighting spirit. And I think no matter what situation you're in, you need to kind of hold on to this idea that you have this fighting spirit. You need to work hard for yourself and fight for yourself. You need to take care of yourself because, in my view, money management and really taking care of your finances is a form of self-care. And so you can't lose hope. You've got to keep on going and keep trying.
I'd like to break this down just a little bit into short-term goals and long-term goals. What are some ways that people can plan for those short-term things? If it's a vacation, if it's a small renovation, whatever you are hearing from people, let's start a bit with where they can begin.
Absolutely. So I always kind of like to think of it as, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We need to deal with those essential needs, the food, shelter, safety. We want to make sure we have that fully funded emergency fund, which is, 3 to 6 months of living expenses or whatever number makes the most sense for you. That is always where I tell people to start, even before paying off debt. We need that emergency fund because if you have debt and you pay it all off and then an emergency happens and you don't have cash in the bank to pay for it, you're back into debt. So let's focus on setting that financial foundation. And then the next step was also creating that spending plan. Let's allocate your income in a way that we're putting money into savings, we're paying your bills, we are making progress every month. So there's a little bit more in savings, little less more in debt, and you can see that progress in those numbers. And then just take it step by step with, maybe, okay, let's reduce our expenses a little bit and, increase our savings rate a little bit and see where we can go from there. And as you achieve more and more goals, whether that's just saving up for that vacation or paying off that credit card, then you can kind of up the ante, create some bigger, loftier goals. And, I always tell people that it seems like things move so slowly at the beginning, but I promise you, if you do it year in and year out, you'll look back 5-10 years and you'll be amazed where you got to.
When it comes to and it's interesting, I haven't heard that having having the emergency fund before paying off the debt. When it comes to getting a new credit card, that kind of thing, consolidating debt, we see a lot of those ads.
Hmm.
Are those
Yeah,
good ways? Are they valuable, do you think?
they can be. I think absolutely, especially if you're dealing with predominantly high interest debt, such as credit cards that are charging about 20% interest. Debt consolidation can be very helpful, reducing that interest rate and then allowing you to pay more principal, less interest. However, sometimes you really do need to figure out I just need some cash in the bank because I have a lot of financial anxiety without having any kind of safety net. So that's why I kind of say start with that first and then maybe look into some options on how can we reduce the debt? How can we, consolidate things, improve that situation a little bit so we can make some progress. But I like to start with the emergency first and then the debt second, because if you try to do everything all at once, you're going to get too overwhelmed and not do anything. So that's where I kind of have the step one, step two.
Before we get to our next topic, I want to go to an email that Joanne kindly emailed us again to say, money does make the world go round. First divorce, she worked a full-time job, 7:30 a.m. to 2 p.m., started doing light housekeeping and gardening afternoon and full day Saturday while raising a child. My goal was to rebuild my life, provide opportunity for my child, and create security for the future. Those working long hours, 60 to 70 hours a week, paid off. Built a home, put daughter through university, now retired, remarried, and live comfortably with no mortgage and no debt. Moral of the story is that hard work pays off. Money is not a cold calculating, but security and living a rewarding life. Joanne, we appreciate your perspective on there. You mentioned it earlier, Jessica, around a bit of a generational divide. And we've certainly heard that from some people who grew up, if we can call them baby boomers, where they needed one income. Where, yes, there were high interest rates in the 70s and 80s, but the down payment and the cost for that house was certainly much less, and there was more house in a yard for many of them than what they were getting today. Do you still feel it's, or what do you think about the, I guess, the gap of expectations that people have?
Yeah, I think that's one of the most difficult things is, there were real financial struggles back then, and there's real financial struggles right now. They're just different struggles. Cost of living was very different back then. However, I also look at where we are now, and now you can work from home. You can have more flexibility. There are so many different jobs and more jobs that exist now that didn't exist 10, 20, 30 years ago. And there's a lot more opportunity for people. I mean, even just as a woman, I'm like, there weren't that many women in finance. 30 years ago. This is an amazing time to be a woman. There's a lot more opportunity than there was in the past. And so I always kind of look at things, glass half full. Things are pretty great right now, all things considered. And, sometimes we just need to think a little bit differently. So I don't think we need to feel guilty or feel, ashamed for not being a homeowner by the same, time that our parents were. Because houses are $1 million. It's not as realistic, but that doesn't mean that you can't achieve some amazing things in your financial life and have that security. Maybe it means you rent a little bit longer, but you maybe focus less on putting everything into your mortgage in your home and invest in your RRSP and your TFSA. Build wealth in maybe a little bit of a different way compared to older generations that really they put a lot of money into real estate, maybe not as much into other types of investments. So I think it's really about figuring out, okay, we're in a bit of a different game. There's kind of different rules. So how can we adapt? And I think there's a lot of opportunity. And again, there's a lot more access to financial education than there was in the past as well. So there's never been a better time to learn what you don't know than there is today.
And Jessica, what would you say to somebody, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, before we get to the long-term goal, what should they do if they fail at a financial goal?
I'd say forgive yourself. It's okay. Everyone fails. No one talks about it though. Because everyone wants to present as absolutely perfect. I talk about some of my financial failures and personal failures in my book, and I'm totally fine with that because no one is perfect. Everyone makes mistakes. The thing is, you cannot let a mistake, whether it's financial or otherwise, define you. It's not part of your identity. It's just something that you did and it didn't work out. And hopefully you can take away a really important lesson from that, such as don't do that again, or I'm going to do that differently next time. But I'd say don't beat yourself up from a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes, but no one shares them because, no one likes showing that they're not absolutely perfect.
Just to wrap up in the time that we have left, we really appreciate your time and expertise. If somebody's listening to this and thinking, okay, well, I've got a short-term and a long-term goal, and is it anything beyond just reestablishing their relationship with money? Maybe they have a sense of that. Where do you suggest they go in 2025?
Well, I think that's a pretty personal question. I think it's different for everyone. And I think that's the thing. I would love to say, do this. This is what your vision for 2025 is. I think you need to figure out what is your intention. What do you want to achieve this year? And honestly, like, quiet the noise, ignore social media, ignore any kind of expectation you have on yourself. Really take a good look at your life and what you want for your future and decide, what do I want this year? And will it be different from last year? And how am I going to make sure that it is different? So my answer may be different than someone else's, but I'd say, quiet the noise and start listening to yourself more.
Jessica Moorhouse, millennial money expert and host of the More Money podcast and author of Everything But Money, The Hidden Barriers Between You and Financial Freedom. Thank you for your time and your insights. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Well, back to 2025, the beginning of it at least. One way to ring in the new year is a tradition not for the faint of heart. Thousands of people descended on Metro Vancouver beaches to take part in the annual Polar Bear Swim. We spoke with a few of the brave who dove in.
It was a cold water, but not that cold as last year or previous years.
This is where the fun is. This is the funnest part of this city is today in the cold water.
Wake up a little bit from last night, Yeah, get a good shock to your system,
Well, I was really prepared, but then to my parents, they were talking about it, how bad it could be, so I got really nervous after.
This is number 29 today. Woo-hoo! It's been fun. And I started the first year long ago. I was watching people, and it was colder to watch than to go in the water and get, the energy. It's so energizing to do it. So it's a lot of fun.
How was it the 29th time?
Fantastic as usual. I really enjoyed it. I like to get in and be loud and woo, you let it out. And then when you come out, you just have a big smile.
It's refreshing, and it's, the beautiful thing about the cold water is it just wakes you up to the new year, to approach it with an open mind.
What's your message to people for 2025?
2025, chill out, cool it. Be real.
We're hopeful for a good 2025.
Yeah. You can chill out and polar bear swim. There you go. That's it for our show. Thank you for joining our discussion today. You can always email us, as you did, at bctoday@cbc.ca.